Okay, so next I wanted to talk about Susan Bordo's Twilight Zones, which is a collective book of essays, and they're not you don't have to have a background in philosophy to read this book. They're written at a quite an ordinary language level, but there are still some really good thoughts in here. And she's a well-known feminist philosopher who's done a lot with symbols, symbol systems, the way women are portrayed in things, symbolically, and that's throughout this book. I mean, there's all kinds of areas of body image and symbols, and the thing I wanted to focus on is actually the title essay for this book, which is called "The Hidden Life of Cultural Images from Plato to OJ." And she has also honed into what she puts in here as a spectacle of diversity, in which we're theorizing everything, but we're really grasping nothing. And she goes on to point out there was a revision of Stanford's curriculum and asking, how is a Chicano student going to be expected to find her identity in Plato and Aristotle? Plato and Aristotle. What reference does any of this stuff have to a multicultural curriculum? Well, she goes on to talk about how when we're celebrating all this difference by tasting all these dishes at the smorgasbord table, that and this is definitely a philosophical view. It's a view I hold as well, that the world is not a collection of discrete and disjointed items. That arguments are not taxi cabs where you get to point them and tell them where to go and where to turn. They're like buses. And when you get on the bus, you have to follow the bus where it goes and where the argument goes and where the conclusions go. And we can't just leave this up to whims and tastes of things, and that do this sort of global sightseeing of these things and say, well, they're all of equal values, and they're all relative to their cultural surroundings, and so we can't determine anything to be really true because it's only true within a cultural context. And I, of course, and she as well, don't think that is actually a good way to reason through things. So if you're interested in those kinds of things, this is worth reading. I've enjoyed this. This is more for me also like a bedside book, something I've read in the evenings off and on. But lastly, Letters to a Young Contrarian by Christopher Hitchens. This is my second Hitchens book. God is Not Great was my first book, and I've read this one cover to cover. I've read everything in here. There's so much to it, and very digestible. You can pick up a letter and read 10 pages, walk away, and get something out of it, and then pick up another one later. So he's also talked about identity politics and the ways in which we have made the personal political. And he doesn't want anything to do with it. He states that he observed people began standing up at meetings and orating about how they felt, not about what or how they thought and about who they were, rather than what if they had done or what they stood for, but how they felt. And he talks about the narcissism of the small difference. This is all in this letter, which is how a cultural group and its subgroups have these specifications. And you can look at Christianity. There's still some main branches to Christianity. And then you have all the various subgroups, and they believe all these different things about the doctrine, or it gets really strange. And one subgroup, even in the same theological branch, doesn't believe something that another subgroup does, and so they're somehow better. One group's going to hell. One group points out, oh, they're just ignorant and backwater over there, and we're the enlightened group. And of course, all these self-serving claims always support the group that's making them. They never they never reverse the lens to realize, well, wouldn't the other group say the same thing about you? So it's a letter about that, and he talks about this tendency being satirized in this way. The overweight caucus of Cherokee transgender disabled lesbian faction demands a hearing on its needs, but never satirized enough. So he enjoys that satirical remark. And, we do see things like that, where these subgroups are talking about things that are relatively small difference. And I especially observe this on the extreme left, where you then become hypersensitive, and you want to chastise anyone who doesn't follow some of the subgroup specifications for things, and it's getting absurd. I mean, I'm all for the left. I mean, I'm a liberal man myself, and LGBTQ, totally in favor of it. I can't stand the transgender bathroom thing. I think this is the reason people come to Portland, because they want to escape all that bullshit. It's totally unnecessary and ridiculous. Now, just me saying LGBTQ, now there's some other things I'm excluding. So I think it's LGBTQ IIQ. One of the I's is intersex, and the second Q is questioning, but I can't remember the additional I. And so it's like, all these subgroups, all these categories, and soon there's going to be like furries are going to be in there. I mean, this has to be coming. I mean, I'm doing this in August of 2016, and like maybe in the next year we see an LGBTQF or something that talks about how one feels sexually about their human and animal spirit. I don't know. I'm just projecting some things here as well, as to make a point that I'm all for. Look, I mean, you don't have to fit into two categories, okay? Like, and that's about it for me. Like, I accept that, and there can be all kinds of categories. We don't. So these are thought-provoking books in many ways around, I think, current issues. So if you've enjoyed what I've had to say, I'd recommend picking some of these up and taking a read. Thanks a lot. Bye.